Welcome to the Membership Guys podcast. Kick-ass advice and tips for membership site owners.
Hey folks, welcome to episode 252 of the Membership Guys podcast. I'm your host Mike Morrison, one half of the Membership Guys, and this is the number one place to be for proven practical tips and advice on growing a successful membership business. This week we're doing something a little bit different. There was a great question asked on a recent member Q&A call that we did inside Membership Academy. We do these calls twice a month and we hang out with our members for about 90 minutes, basically just answering any and all questions they have about membership sites. And even though we've been doing these for 5 years now, these guys always surprise us with every Q&A by coming mostly, about 90%, with questions we've never been asked before on previous calls. So a few weeks ago on one of our calls, one of our members, Todd, brought up a great question that gave me a good opportunity to talk about something that I think is important, not just for membership owners, but for all entrepreneurs, particularly ones who are running online businesses. And that is the question of how often should you be checking and adjusting and changing up your membership sales funnels, or even things like your onboarding processes or any other sort of automations. And this is important, particularly with online businesses, because I think we have a tendency to overdo this a little bit. We always want to be checking on how our funnels are doing. We always want to be tinkering. There's always that little bit of a concern that you haven't got it quite right, or it's not working quite quickly enough for you. So I was really glad Todd asked this question. And originally I did think, you know what, I'm just going to come away and I'm going to repeat myself in an episode of the podcast. I actually joked after the question was answered that this would make a real good podcast. But I thought, you know what, rather than doing that, let's just give you guys a little bit of a glimpse, a little bit of a taste into one of our Q&A calls. So I've just pulled that part of the call. I've just taken the audio direct from the call itself, and that's what we're going to hear in today's episode. Now, keep in mind, obviously, this is from a live call, so it's maybe a little less polished. I don't have my radio voice perfected on these live calls, but I hope you'll agree that the message and the key takeaways are useful and really important, I think, for anyone running an online business, particularly a membership site. So let's dive in.
The next question is from Todd, who says, how often do you make adjustments to your funnels, i.e. lead magnet to email? What's the balance between tinkering too much and not enough? Any rules of thumb when analyzing your lead magnets or automations?
I don't think it's something you should be diving into any more regularly than once a quarter. I think it's good to have an awareness and to almost kind of check in on the surface level. So I check our analytics every day, but I do it on the mobile app. And I specifically only do it on the mobile app because the mobile app is limited in how much I can dive in and dig in. So I don't end up falling down the rabbit hole and spending 2 hours obsessing over the minutiae of our stats. So I think it's good to have your finger on the pulse of how things are going, to know how you're performing, to know, to know how many leads you're getting, to know what traffic you're getting, how many podcast downloads you're getting, how many signups you're getting. But I think in terms of your funnel, I think it's a quarterly thing where you dive in, you analyze, okay, what are the open rates, what are the click-through rates, which emails in which campaigns are directly leading to sales, and then you make decisions based on that. So, you're almost led with how often do you change? Like, you change when the data tells you need to change. That might be once a quarter, that might be once every 5 years. So it's not about the frequency with how often you make change, it's the frequency with how often you actually dive into the stats. You do that deep dive, you gather that data, you analyze that data, and then you make decisions as to whether you need to make changes. So with us, like you're talking about changing lead magnets, for example, we've had our plugin comparison chart since day one. Now, the content of it changes, so this is a different
it
thing.
gets updated.
Yeah, this is a different thing. The content of it needs to change just because of what the content is. But the actual having that as a lead magnet and having that something we promote and use to get people on emails, that's not something that's changed in 5 years because it hasn't needed to, because it's converted solidly for all that time. And we've tested other lead magnets, and actually this one still, and we use other lead magnets, but this one still performs at a high level. So yeah, it's not about, okay, every quarter I'm going to change up my sales funnels and this, that, and the other. Only change stuff when the data tells you need to change. And I think once a quarter is a good frequency with which to set aside a day or so to really dive into your stats. Avoid the temptation of doing it more than that, because changes you do make will take months to actually start moving the needle. So if you're tinkering and tweaking every week, you're not giving stuff enough time to actually have an effect. So you're making bad decisions because the data doesn't reflect the changes you made last time. So yeah, that's my perspective on it. It's very possible to over-engineer this stuff, to overthink it, and to essentially self-sabotage by constantly chasing that mythical perfect sales funnel, or constantly, nearly swore there, constantly messing around with all the pieces of the puzzle. I would also say the granularity, is that a word?
Yes.
Sounds like a word, doesn't it?
Word.
Granularity. The granularity of the changes that you make and the tests you make, don't get carried away with that. So unless you're getting like millions of visitors to your sales page every month, don't be messing around with, does a red button convert better than a green button? Like, the differences you're going to be able to make with such granular tweaks and changes are so negligible when you have, I don't want to say low amount of traffic, but when you have relatively low amount of traffic, so hundreds or thousands of people visiting your page. Yeah, that's just another tip there. And I know that's something shared by some leading kind of conversion optimization specialists. Unless you're getting masses of traffic, testing and tweaking the real small stuff is pointless, because okay, that might improve your conversion rate 0.02%, but you know what, who cares? Because actually you're never going to have enough data to be able to see whether it was that change you made or whether it was just a seasonal thing or a marketplace thing or whatever. So yeah, that's just another thing. Don't get carried away with this stuff.
I think it's so easy though when you're wanting to make improvements or things to just start tweaking and get obsessed.
You know what? The reason for that is because the whole point of these sales funnels and these marketing things and stuff that we do is that you're supposed to be able to put this in place and then let it do its thing, let it work its magic, without you needing to keep pushing the cart, right? But when you've got all this stuff in place and then the time comes for you to sit back and let it work, you can feel like you get that feeling of, I should be doing something. Yeah. Like I should be doing something. When actually the thing you should be doing is stepping away and letting it do its thing, right? So it's kind of like, you bake a cake. I know we've got a lot of people in the membership who are cake makers or cake decorators. You bake a cake, if you keep opening the oven door every 2 minutes to check on how that cake is doing, you will ruin the cake. And I'm not a particularly dab hand in the kitchen, but I know enough to know that if you constantly open an oven door and you let all that air in, your cake is going to flatten, you're going to ruin it. And that's what some people do in sales and marketing. They're constantly opening that bloody oven door to check on how things are doing. Oh, should I turn the temperature? Should I tweak it? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? No. Leave it. Give it the time it's supposed to be given, step away, and allow all the ingredients you just mixed together to do what they're meant to do. That's a good analogy, isn't it? Thank you. Alright, I hope you guys found that useful. And how about that analogy? Like, I love that analogy. I just made that up on the fly. I know nothing about baking. I haven't baked a cake in well over a decade, probably more than 2 decades since I was a kid. I don't know about that, but I think the analogy works. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a lot of tweets from membership owners who have cake baking memberships in. Well, actually, Mike, opening the oven door at least 3 or 4 times is better for the overall whatevers. I'm sure that's the case, and you know what? Bring it on. Please tweet me and put me right. But regardless of whether opening the door does really spoil the cake, you got the message, right? Don't overdo it. Don't overthink it. Don't give in to the anxiety that can sometimes come from inaction, from feeling like you should be doing something. You should be messing around with your funnels. You should be adjusting your onboarding sequence. You've got to give this time stuff to do its job, to actually percolate and to start generating results for you. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode. As I said, it's something a little different to what we usually do. If it's been useful to you, I'd love to hear from you on social media. You can hit us up on all the usual channels, on Twitter at Membership Guys, on Instagram at Membership Guy, singular, just me on there, or on Twitter inside our free Facebook group, Membership Mastermind. Search for it on Facebook, or type in talkmemberships.com to your browser. That'll redirect you to the right place. And of course, if you are an Academy member, then make sure that you're coming along to our live Q&A calls. We do them every 2 weeks, like clockwork, inside the Academy. It's a perfect opportunity to hang out with us, with your fellow members, and to pick our brains on any challenges, any ideas, anything you need help with in your membership. That is it from me for this week. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back again next week with another installment of the Membership Guys podcast. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Membership Guys podcast, we invite you to check out membershipacademy.com. The Membership Academy is the essential resource for anyone at any stage of starting, growing, and running a membership website. Whether you're still trying to figure out what your idea is going to be, or whether your website is already up and running and you're just looking for ways to grow it and attract new members, then the Membership Academy can help you to get to the next level. With our extensive course library, monthly training, exclusive member-only discounts, perks and tools, and a supportive, active community to help you along the way with feedback, encouragement and advice, the Membership Academy is the perfect place to be for anyone looking to start, manage and grow a successful membership website. Check it out at membershipacademy.com.